Welcome to the KC Stars, where we talk to people in the local film community. And are you able to see my screen? I know you're not going to be on, but can you see me?
I can see you perfect.
Okay, great. Great. Well, I have with me Todd Sheets, who is a legend in horror filmmaking and been around for many decades. I'll let you do a better introduction yourself, sir.
Oh man. Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I've really loved working with you, Kyle, and I've really loved our adventures together so far. I got a feeling we got some more to go, and we're going to be doing some more cool stuff down the road. That's something I wanted to tell you, and thank you again for all your support. As far as my career, I started back in Super 8 film when I was a kid. That kind of really hooked me, so to speak. I became quite fond of filmmaking. I loved the process and didn't have any training, of course. I was a kid. But then from there, I kind of started going a little more into, trying to do more and more short films and things on Super 8 with my friends. And then that led to us shooting on video because wow, film was expensive and there was no way to edit it. And I made myself a little Super 8 editing station, but that was about as as good as it got. And then I started getting a little more serious about it. And in 1988, I started shooting my first feature called Blood of the Undead here in Kansas City, and that was a horrifying nightmare. And I was told by everybody I could not make movies in Kansas City. In 1988, there was no film scene, nobody believed in it at all. There was one movie that had been made here called Time Sweep, and there was a few others popping in here and there, but mainly I was told nobody can make movies in Kansas City, and I went against all those odds and did it anyway. My first film was such a nightmare, I decided I wasn't going to do it anymore, but I did anyway because I loved the process. Um, and it kind of took off from there. My first 4 or 5 movies got picked up for worldwide video distribution. At the time, VHS was a major player in the world, and they needed product and I needed distribution. So that's what happened. And unlike a lot of movie makers who, in their early days, hide that crazy stuff when you're learning and you're growing and you're trying to figure out even how to use a camera or anything, you usually hide that stuff with your friends and bring it out for holidays, and everybody sits around and laughs and has a good time watching it. Whereas I allowed ours to get worldwide distribution. Um, and it kind of got my foot in the door, which was great. The VHS boom was fantastic for me. Got my foot in the door, and I haven't looked back since, really. I've been going pretty much nonstop since then.
I'm looking at your IMDb. You have, I don't know how many credits, but a tremendous number. I think we're in the probably the hundreds, but a lot of them, like your writer, director, producer. Like, what do you consider your specialty?
Um, it's kind of weird because I didn't start out wanting to do any of those things. I just was, wanting to do makeup, and I loved monster movies, and I, would contact Dick Smith or Rick Baker through Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. I was a Famous Monsters kid, and Forey would connect all of us. He was the editor, Forey Ackerman, and he kind of made the magic happen for those of us that were just, starting. We were just kids, and I learned a lot about how to do makeup and things. And so that was my main interest, and I wanted to make monster movies. But the thing was, my dad was the only one that had a camera, and he's like, "You're the only one that can use the camera." So I ended up directing and doing everything because it was my dad's lights and my dad's cameras, so I had no choice. But something weird happened. I started really loving the process of directing and of kind of lighting things and working toward the goal of whatever I wrote down on a piece of paper, suddenly I could bring to life on the screen by doing this stuff. And so I got pretty serious about my Super 8 filmmaking for a little while before I went to video. And we even started to shoot on 16 millimeter, which I bought one at a garage sale when I was a teenager, and that was really fun, but it was impossible to keep up with that because of the money, the situation with money. There was no way we could afford that. And it was weird too because sometimes you'd shoot on Super 8 and you'd get the film back and it'd either be too light or too dark. Even though I used a light meter, um, Super 8 was really finicky and it was very
Mhm.
difficult. So 16 was as well, not quite as bad as Super 8, but it was always a crapshoot. But what I loved about the video thing was it was coming out at the time. It was kind of new and you couldn't buy the darn things. You just had to rent them. And so I would rent those and you could see exactly what you shot that same day, which was kind of nice. And it was a learning process on how to do all that at the time.
Did you have to do everything in order at that point? Like to make a movie, everything had to be filmed in order?
We tried to do that a little bit, yeah, at first, but because of the Super 8 thing, that's kind of how I kind of taught myself. But it's weird because then they came out with these cameras that had flying erase heads, and you could use the camera and your VCR as two different decks, and you could rearrange scenes or do whatever you needed that way. So I
Wow.
did that a little bit on Super 8 as well, because I created my own splicing station and I would basically cut and edit the movies that way so I could move the scenes around and stuff on Super 8. And sometimes it would take, because Super 8 reels were very short, so it would take a few of those to make our Frankenstein castle epic or whatever we were doing at the time. And so I'd kind of processed how to edit by just doing it and learning how to do it on Super 8. And my projector had a really cool thing where I could dub one of the audio tracks on the projector. That led to some really interesting, we would have a microphone set up. I'd have music on my Panasonic cassette player. I would have recorded and I hit play, tried to synchronize it the best I could, and then my friends and I would do sound effects live on the fly. So it was a very tedious and terrifying process. And then once
I
you
love
did it
it.
on the film, you couldn't go back because it was there. So at least with the video, any kind of audio dumbing we could redo. So that was kind of nice.
I
But it
love it.
still
Now,
was only one track. So
yeah. So did you grow up? I know you grew up somewhere. What part of Kansas City did you grow up in?
I was in the Northland. I
Okay.
was running around Gracemore area and over by Antioch Mall. And then finally over off of Inglewood, I was in the Northland area all of my youth and pretty much all my life.
Okay. Okay. This is a non-film related question. Almost everything else is going to be film related. Um, you've lived in Kansas City pretty much all your life, if not all your life. Where, if someone said I can go to one barbecue place, where are you going to recommend? And they can go anywhere in the Kansas City area. Where's your recommendation?
Gates. I think Gates is my all-time favorite. I love a lot of different barbecue places, but there's something about the sauce at Gates that I really love. I love the original sauce there, but I also like the spicy sauce. I'm not keen on sweet barbecue. That's just not who I am. I'm Italian. I grew up, never liked sweet tomato sauce either. We always had the spicier stuff in my family. And so I'm really into the Gates barbecue sauce. I think is pretty amazing. But I love barbecue. It's weird. I'm barely eat meat at all because I'm like on the borderline of just being vegetarian. I don't eat pork or chicken at all. But in Kansas City, it's very difficult to be vegetarian. It's better now than it used to be, but this is a meat town. This is a meat eating town, I tell you. And so barbecue is like king here, and it is pretty good. I mean, there's so many I like, that it's hard it's hard because I've enjoyed so many different barbecue restaurants in Kansas City, but I think Gates would be my all-time favorite. I do like Smokehouse. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
but
good.
again, it kind of comes down to Gates gives you a lot for the price. They give you good quality and they give you great sauce, and those huge fries are amazing. So I go with that.
That's good. Great answer. Now back to film. when did you transition? I don't even know, like digital film, is that, I don't know, I don't even know the terminology, but when did you transition to modern film?
Well, it's weird because when I first started out shooting on real film and then going to digital, still kind of not knowing what I was doing, but trying to learn because back then people have to realize there was no YouTube, there was no internet, there was
Mhm.
no books almost at all on the subject, and the few books there were, they weren't completely user friendly to a kid. But I got this Painting with Light book by John Alton, who created the entire, I mean, I wouldn't say the entire, but a huge amount of the look of noir films is because of John Alton, because he kind of developed the aesthetic for that look. And I loved the Universal monster movies as a kid, the black and whites and the Sherlock Holmes flicks. And I really got into his style of cinematography. So I got his book and I started learning about that. And I think, thank God, because even though my early movies were terrible, at least you could see what was going on. We put enough lights in them so you could see, which is a huge, when you're an amateur filmmaker, your first movies are never lit right. And I'm not saying all of our lights were in the right spot, but at least it was lit and you could see what the heck was going on. And we were learning where to put the lights. But yeah, that's kind of the thing is, video was readily available, so I started on that, and the rest of the world kind of caught up or got around to using video too, which I think is interesting because in a lot of cases now they still shoot some movies on film, but in a lot of cases they're shooting this stuff on digital cameras, and the digital cameras kind of all started going 24 frames per second like film instead of 29.97 or 30 frames per second. I learned all that stuff as I was going, and I started working for a local TV station here and I'm doing some work at Cablevision. American Cablevision had their own TV station, and I started doing a lot of work there. This producer named Rodney at the time, he did a TV show called Kansas City Alive, and he brought me in as one of the guys there. And then I started producing shows there also with Vince Kaler and called Entertainment Spectrum. We did that and a couple other shows. And so I was learning as I was going. But the funny part is, the rest of the world has now caught up. Now, at the time, everyone was yelling at me and calling me names for shooting on video, telling me I wasn't making real movies, which technically I wasn't making films, but I was making movies in a weird way because they were more and more people were doing shot on video movies. When I started, there was only one or two guys doing it in the home video market. But then I started doing it, and right around that same time, one or two other guys started doing it, and we were the pioneers kind of the shot on video movement. And then other guys started joining us doing it because they saw our stuff, they started doing it. And so it's interesting to see, the evolution of that because suddenly now people are shooting on digital cameras. People are shooting on what DSLRs that are just kind of, I mean, I don't even consider those video cameras really. I mean, they're really photography cameras, but they shoot video. And I never have shot with one of those because I've always wanted the big, huge, camera. I've always wanted all
Mhm.
that to go with it. As you know, I still shoot with a big Sony 4K camera now. It's the broadcast camera, but that's more what I like is that aesthetic because I came from like 16 millimeter cameras and I wanted it to at least feel like a camera. And then we were
Mhm.
using like the AG series Panasonic Super VHS cameras, which were pretty big. And I used 3/4 inch and Betacam SP. These were all big cameras. So I know you can shoot it on little cameras that, basically are just, photography cameras. But for me, I still need that feeling, And it's funny because people are shooting on their iPhone and they have to buy all this stuff to go with it. So by the time they're done, it's almost as big as my camera because
Right,
it's got
right.
all these
Back
attachments and
up the
everything.
lenses and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's so crazy. It's but their main input is to the iPhone, but it's got a million things attached to it. So it's interesting though to see all these different things happening in the evolution of cameras and in the red cameras and all those things. I really like all that.
So Why horror? Because I know you've done a few things outside of horror, but why horror?
Well, when I was a kid growing up, every weekend we'd go to the drive-in. And a big thing at the drive-in were horror movies, sci-fi movies, martial arts, exploitation films. And it kind of captured my heart. Like I said, I love the Universal monster movies. My first childhood memory at the drive-in was The Boy Who Cried Werewolf, Night of the Living Dead, and the movie with Dirk Benedict, where he turns into a snake. This was the a triple feature, of course, and back then you could see triple, quadruple features sometimes, and sometimes it'd be all night blowouts of movies at the drive-in, and every weekend was a new thrill, so to speak. This is why I fell in love with a lot of crazy black action movies also at the time. Rudy Ray Moore and Pam Grier, and the list goes on and on and on. Jim Brown, Jim Kelly. I loved all those guys because that was what was playing at the drive-ins. We had a theater downtown also called the Empire Theater, which I called the indoor drive-in because they played all the same kind of movies, only you could go in the wintertime too.
Mhm.
And that one, of course, as I grew older, I realized that was kind of a grindhouse. It wasn't quite as grindy as the grindhouses in New York City, which I got to go to as a teenager, but it was pretty much our version of a grindhouse here in Kansas City. So those movies really, I felt like were out of this world. And I don't know about you, but when you're a kid, there's so many weird things. And in my life, we were moving a lot. It was hard to, you're moving to a new place, then you got to make friends again. And
Mhm.
that was difficult. And so my friends were, superheroes in my comic books and the monsters on the screen. Those were my buddies. And I always saw, like, with the Wolfman or Frankenstein's monster, or even Dracula in the Universals. There's a little bit, Dracula, not as much though, because he was an evil dude. But in those movies, there was kind of a tragedy to those monsters because the Wolfman, he wasn't trying to do anything. He was a curse. He got bit. Now he's out there. People are doing bad stuff. He didn't even want to kill anybody, but it just happened. People got in his way. He was hungry. It's werewolves for you. But Creature from the Black Lagoon, man, that poor dude, he's hanging out. He's just enjoying his space in the water. He's got his little house. He's got his cave. He ain't bothering nobody. And then people come along and mess with him and try to capture him and all this. I mean, it was a tragic story. And the same can be said for Frankenstein's monster because he didn't ask to be born, but look at here, he's a mess. So those monsters were very influential. And also the Hammer films came along as I was going to the drive-in, the 70s, early 70s. Here comes, Christopher Lee, who's my all-time favorite Dracula, Peter Cushing, who's the only Van Helsing I can even tolerate. These guys, and Oliver Reed was a Curse of the Werewolf. He was amazing. All these movies were so great, and they were very imaginative, and it took all this skill. I mean, they didn't look like regular movies. They had this cool lighting, the Universal black and white stuff. It took noir a step further, even because it started out before there was even noir, the Universal monster movies, and they had those great shadows and those great shots and the lighting and all the cool atmosphere, the fog, and they didn't look and sound like any other movie, even the black and white ones. So, getting into the color with Hammer and all those movies and all through the 70s, it was great because they looked so amazing and it was like a different world. So, as a kid, you have these bad days. You have peer pressure, you have school issues. Maybe you got in a fight at school, or your teacher, this or that happened, or in my case, all these things. And plus, my parents were getting a divorce in the late 70s. They got, they had a divorce, they got back together, they got another divorce. What a mess, right?
Wow.
But
Yeah.
adults do these things. But as a kid, it's a very stressful. And so I would have bad days. Of course I would. And I was a bit of an outcast anyway, because here I am, this tall kid who didn't really play sports much because I was just wanting to. I kind of got into this world of monsters and everything. And I'd play baseball. That baseball was my thing, but that was about it. So I got picked on, and I was in Taekwondo. So that made me a nerd. And so
Hmm.
it was weird. My escape was going to the movies. And when I had a bad day, I would go watch a horror movie or a sci-fi movie or something fantastical like Sinbad back then. And we had a lot of cool Godzilla and Sinbad movies in the 70s playing theaters. And I remember how those movies took me away from all the crap and made my hour and a half or 2 hours. You forget about all that while you're in that theater enjoying these amazing fantastical movies. And so when I started making my own movies, it was my hope in my heart that I could do that for someone else someday. Man, maybe one of my movies will, take bad crap away from somebody for an hour and a half. Maybe I'll entertain them and make them forget about their troubles for a couple hours. Maybe that'll be awesome if I could do that. Wouldn't that be great? And I'm still that guy today. I still feel that way. That's what propels me to keep doing this. I've never taken a salary on a single movie to this day because I genuinely love making movies. And the ultimate thing for me, more than anything else, I mean, if someone came and said, "Hey, we're going to give you $1.5 million and you're going to shoot this movie for us, and then we're going to have this budget, and you won't have to worry about the budget." See, with us, I have to worry. I'm like, I can't take a salary. I got to buy a werewolf head. But if someone else said, "Hey, we've got a budget already, we're going to pay you this to do it," that would be pretty great. But that's not why I'm here. The payoff for me, the big thing for me, the payday is like I've been doing with our new Wolf Moon Rising movie, is going to theaters around this country or being in a theater and watching someone enjoy and be entertained by something that we created. That's the payoff for me. I actually did what I always wanted, which was I took away the crap. I took away the bad vibes and the horrible day for a 90 minutes or a couple hours. I was able to do that for someone else, like what all the great movies I watched did for me as a kid. That's the thing. That was the goal, and I've finally achieved that. Of course, I had to make some pretty crummy, horrible movies to get there, but along the way, something happened. I actually learned how to make a movie somewhere along the line, and
You have a huge following. Like I probably, I mean, I can't think of anybody that has a bigger following in Kansas City than you. Just when you go out, you do signings, you do these little appearances. Tell me about those. Like, how did that come about, or when did that come about?
well, that kind of started for me in the 90s. I was asked to go to these horror conventions and be a guest. And I would go and sit down at my table, and people would come and bring me VHSs, and I'd have a few things there to sell also. And it just kind of it started happening that way. I don't know. There was people that loved the stuff, even though it was crude. Those early movies were like the caveman days in a lot of ways. But people loved them. And it was weird too, because when I first hit that mark and got the movies out there, I'd gone to a couple of monster movie conventions. At the time, they had Famous Monsters conventions and a few others. I'd gone to California for a convention, and I went to another convention in Las Vegas called the VSDA convention, which was for Video Software Dealer Association. And I was a buyer for a couple of video stores in Kansas City, so I was allowed to go to that. And I met David Dakota through this basic avenue of conventions. And David Dakota was a director. He'd worked on a lot of his own stuff, but he also worked with Charlie Band. And I loved their stuff. And Dave had started his own video label called Cinema Home Video, and I showed him our crude little movies that I hoped, at the time I thought they were great. I know they weren't great, but the reason I felt that way is because I was told I couldn't make movies here. So when I finally did, and not only that, but I completed them. I got a little bit of an ego, I must admit, as a teenager and as a young adult. I had a little ego about it. I was like, you told me I couldn't do it. I did it because that's the
Sure.
Italian in me maybe. I hate egos. We all have them, and sometimes they're very helpful to get through things, but overinflated egos and stuff like that, I hate it. But I did have it, for a minute, and then after everyone watched the movies and tore me a new butthole, I realized that yeah, there's no reason to have an ego. They suck. So, but the thing was, and in Kansas City, it was harder because in Kansas City, people would watch those early movies. And to this day, some people in Kansas City have still never seen one of my later films. Like, I'm not allowed to evolve. Like a movie I made in
Right, right.
1989, that's a Kansas City problem. I really do feel. And in 1989, the closed-mindedness. Yeah, I made a movie in 1989. I had no idea what I was doing with a bunch of cool people, but including a lot of my friends. But then, you know, as I kept going, I got better and I evolved and I started working on other people's movies and I started reading everything I could get my hands on and I started practicing, working at the TV studio. That's completely a different animal from filmmaking, including the way it's shot, but I learned as I went. And so I was a bit bitter and I had an ego problem, but all that went away after my, fifth movie or whatever. I was like, yeah, I'm not, I don't need any of that. That's stupid. But as
Hey, I
a,
will tell you just I can't speak for Kansas City, of course, but I moved here in 2019. I'd lived here before. My family's from nearby, so I've been coming to Kansas City all my life pretty much. But I moved here in 2019, and even like here, people come and go. My guess is there's very few people that, like percentage wise, that remember your 1989 movie. I would think like if you started getting involved, actors and filmmakers here, there's very few that have had the longevity that you've had. And I mean, I think I'd say get the best people qualified, get anybody you can in to help, and I think people would be open to you.
well, I think so now. I think that's
Yeah.
true. But you have to realize like the IFC, when it first started, it was a couple of guys that basically one of the guys stole my equipment and sold it at pawn shops in Independence, and the other guy broke my generator. And those guys went off and kind of formed the
Oh,
early
wow.
consensus of IFC, the Independent Filmmakers Coalition in Kansas City. And then proceeded every time they had a meeting, it was just basically a bash fest for me. And I remember they used to go to the Westport Coffee House, and I kept getting reports about people just talking trash, and I didn't understand why. I mean, of course, you get this or that, but and maybe I did rub somebody wrong. Like I said, I had a bad a bitterness and an ego problem when I was a young adult for about 6 months or a year. And so maybe I did rub some people wrong, but as I said, you grew. So I had to go down to their meeting and step in the middle of the meeting. This is an IFC meeting, and I stood in the middle of the room and I said, "Okay, I'm here. You got something to say? You want to hash it out? I'm
Oh my
here."
goodness.
You know me,
Oh my
Kyle.
goodness.
I'm gonna do this. And I was like, let's go, let's do it, because I'm tired of the bull. And so they kind of everyone just kind of looked in silence and freaked out. But another thing that happened to us that was weird was we ended up entering a film. Our producer Amanda had done a film and directed a movie. We entered into the IFC's Halloween screening thing, and they ended up screening it. And we went there, and these two women behind me are at a table sitting directly behind Antoine and Amanda and I, and they were saying how they saw my name come up as the producer of this short because I produced her short and also did work on it. And they were just talking trash on me and saying how I was a horrible person, and they heard I made porno movies and all this stuff. And so the funny thing is they didn't even know who I was because I'm sitting right in
Yeah.
front of them. So I stood up after the whole thing's done, and everyone applauded, and Amanda got pretty big accolades. That one was like the first or second award winner there. And so we stood up afterwards. I turned around and I started talking to these ladies, and I said, "Yeah, my name's Todd Sheets. What's yours?" And they look like they saw a ghost.
Yeah.
There's just weird things that people talk about. Even people I've worked with talk about crazy. Some guy that here in Kansas City that I worked with on several movies during the Dream Purple Neon time in 2016. This is years after I'd worked with him. I hadn't worked with him in a while, but he was spreading things about how we, you know, basically made porno movies and did bad things to one of our actresses, to get the effects we wanted, and none of it was true. I mean, I can't. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's
this is probably a kind of a family show, so I don't want to go into
that's
detail about what
okay.
he
No,
said.
I do think that sometimes rumors are more fun than the truth at times. But I am glad that Amanda entered that. And I'm glad you brought up Amanda. How long has Amanda worked with you?
It's been a while, man. I brought her into the movies in 2012, so it's been a bit of an
Oh,
adventure for her too. She came in basically, working on effects and doing things like that, and pretty soon, the thing is, when you have a core group of people you trust, you bring them in, and so
yeah,
she and Antoine and a couple other people became partners, because I felt like I wanted to have a good team. It's not the Todd show. It's a team effort to make these movies. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with amazing, talented, heartfelt people in Kansas City. That's why I want to make it clear I'm not trying to dog out Kansas City. I'm just explaining why those early, films.
yeah,
Listen, on those early movies, I had a film critic say if I ever picked up a camera again, they would drive here and kill my mother. That's how
yeah.
ruthless people were to those movies. So I disowned a lot of those. Like when I hit by the time I hit Zombie Bloodbath, I had a lot of support. And that was in 1993. And I consider Zombie Bloodbath my first real movie because on that movie I really really had learned a lot and I really tried. I mean, the other movies were more like fun. Let's go out and make a movie and have a good time and let's, bring in my friends and do this and do that. We did try and we did work hard, but those early ones were more a learning going to school experience. And then Zombie Bloodbath, we really, really tried to take everything we'd learned and pull it together. And that's what I consider my first real movie. I know I got started in the winter of '88, but to me, my first real feature is Zombie Bloodbath. And then from then on, I feel like I've grown on each movie. I've gone up and up and up and up the staircase. But on those early movies, we were making so many of them so quickly, and we were just kind of going in circles a lot of times. Inadvertently, we were learning while we were doing it, of course, but we were just kind of uh, we were doing quantity over quality in those
Right.
early days because I was told I need a huge library of movies in order to get foreign distribution. So I was trying to amass a library, and I still worked with some amazing people. And it's not their fault. I just those early movies just didn't turn out the way we all wanted. None of us knew what we were doing, and so that's kind of why I brought that up, is because it was painful, it was difficult, um, and it was hard work, only to be basically spit on at the end of the day because our work wasn't really great, even though we were working really hard. It just wasn't there yet. And most directors hide that stuff, as I said. So they bring it out for holidays and they bring it out just to hang out with their friends. But we allowed ours to get worldwide distribution. And when you put something out there, it's not yours anymore. And the world has a right to hate it or love it or whatever they want to do. But we got a lot of really nasty hate, and it was very hurtful and very difficult for us because we were young adults. We were, barely out of our teens, and it was very, very hurtful. So, it was one of those things where, when I first wrote Blood of the Undead, I was not even 20 years old. I was 19 years old. So that was very hurtful, and it makes you bitter a little bit and it makes you feel a lot of resentment about that. But, that's why I brought it up about some of the guys in Kansas City wouldn't give
Yeah.
me another chance later. And to
Right.
this day, some of them, now you're right, a lot of them are gone, but some of them are still here and they're like, yeah, he's a hack. He doesn't know what he's doing. His movies are shit and this, and this and that. And I'm like, well, you haven't watched one since 1989 or 1990. Give me a chance. I mean, we
Well,
all grow, and I
the,
work with
the
great people like you, and you make them even better.
hey, I got to tell you, thank you. I appreciate that. But I was going to tell you, I was not involved in your movie so far. Like in my mind, your best movie. What do you think I'm going to say?
Um, I'm not sure. That's a
I
good
loved
question because
Bone Hill
everyone
Road.
perceives it.
Bone Hill
Oh, you
Road was
did.
Bone Hill Road was it scared me. I'm on the side of these people that are captured. Like I really wanted them to make it out. I mean, it's like it was beautiful. You did a great job.
That's weird. Bone Hill Road, the way we shot it and everything, we kind of went old school. We decided to shoot it kind of documentary style and
Yeah.
handheld. I didn't have a tripod at all on that movie on purpose. I wanted it to be kind of handheld. I want it to be grainy, kind of like going back to 16 millimeter film, kind of.
Oh,
I wanted it to be a very, a very in your face approach to that film. I wanted to feel like you were there kind of. And
Yeah,
there are
you did a
people that
great
love that
job.
movie. Thank you.
That was probably I like in my opinion like that was Doug's best performance because I've seen several of your movies. That was Doug's best performance. I love Millie Milan. I think she's fantastic.
She is, yeah.
And now hopefully this will become my favorite movie. But I do love werewolves. I
Me
love
too.
werewolves. Can you see my screen now?
I love it. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
It's,
and
it's amazing.
this is your most recent movie that's out, kind of going through the circuit. How many awards has it won, or what can you tell us about that? Because I feel like you're getting a better reception than you would have 30 years ago.
Well, Wolf Moon Rising's a different animal entirely, though, because the movie is an homage to the sci-fi slash horror films of Roger Corman, movies made by the likes of Joe Dante and Jim Wynorski, Fredel and Ray's early stuff. This is kind of in that realm, but especially like movies like Galaxy of Terror, Forbidden World, Humanoids from the Deep, stuff like that. And even the movie Creature, which was not a Corman production by Bill Malone. These movies are very much what inspired this movie. And this movie, I've been told, is the best drive-in movie that wasn't made during that era. A
Yeah,
lot of people are loving it because of that feeling.
it's
And
awesome.
Corman had passed away, and I was very heartbroken. And I've been really good friends with Jim Wynorski. And so Jim kind of, I was talking to him about it, and I started writing the script, and he was kind of my consultant, even though it was off the record kind of consultant, because he and I were at Cinema Wasteland convention together, and he was basically telling me the whole time how they did everything on these movies, how the sets were made, how they did the props, how they did the miniatures, up to the matte paintings. And so I basically soaked all that in like a sponge and regurgitated it with this movie. But it also has a really strong script, and it's a crossover movie. A lot of my movies are so gory, people they can't do it. I mean, it blows them away. But this movie has a really, really strong story, and it's not so gory. It's kind of a crossover because you got the sci-fi thing going on. You've got the spaceships. The whole thing takes place in space. It's nonstop action. It's going back to the serials like the Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, nonstop action stuff. It's got all that going on. Battle Beyond the Stars is an influence. Star Crash with Carolyn Monroe is an influence in it. These movies were influential in my youth, but they're very influential in this particular project. And I'm seeing a huge crossover crowd here. People that I normally don't see it, like Dream Purple Neon. And I will say, like House of Forbidden Secrets, also it's gory, but it's not as gory because what I'm trying to do with each movie since I my heart attack when I came back, I was gone for a little while, and then my heart attack happened and I came back. And when I came back into filmmaking, because when you have a heart attack, you realize what you love the most in your life, and that was it. So that and animals. So I came back and I started making my movies again strong. And the weird thing that happened when I came back, my first movie back was House of Forbidden Secrets, and everyone's like, "Holy crap, this looks like a real movie! It's got like dolly shots and crane shots, and it's like beautifully lit, and it's like it sounds good. It's a real movie. What happened?" But it was cool because that movie and every movie I really make it an effort to use a different style for each movie, a different aesthetic, so to speak, and to make each movie bigger and better if I can. And each movie is a learning process. It's like school. So if I am on the set and I'm making a movie and I don't learn something that day, that's a wasted day. That's a day that I'm furious. I want that day back because every day I want to learn something new about filmmaking. I want to learn something new about working with the actors or about how to create what I want, how to get out of what's in my head out onto that screen. And when I type or write a movie, this is very telling for Wolf Moon Rising because when I write a movie, I actually close my eyes and I start writing, but I'm seeing the entire movie on a drive-in movie screen. That's where I grew up. And I see that drive-in movie screen, and that's where the movie plays out. I don't do storyboards because every time I do a storyboard sequence, I'm wasting my time. I get to the set, it's nothing like my storyboard because the set's completely different and I have to throw them out anyway. So I do it all in my head, the drive in my head, and I try to write for what I know I have or what I know I can do. Wolf Moon Rising was stretching every ounce of creativity I had to do this because the sets, building those, thank God for my haunted house days, I knew how to build sets. So I built the sets, and then, we tied them all in with the awesome airport hangar that Jack McCord is able to provide for us because
Hmm.
he's a teacher that teaches people how to fix, you know, airport he's like an airport engineer. He's like a I know he's got so many titles, but the one I know the most is he fixes airplane engines.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. But he's got a lot of titles, and he's a teacher of that, and he's able to get us in that aviation school out there by the Royal Stadium, and we were able to get in there and make our sets at the building where our studio is. We could transfer some of those panels and things over to there to tie it all together. So we were able to really bring an entire world to life. And then I had to figure out, well, how am I going to do spaceships and how am I going to do planets and how am I going to do black holes? It was such a great creative process. And those early days on Super 8 saved me because I used to make science fiction movies called Amber Star on Super 8 film. And I
Mm.
was a kid with my friends, and I was like 13, 14 years old, 12 years
That's why
old.
it's called the Amber Star now, I know.
That's why the ship is the Amber Star, and the captain is John Apollo, because that all came from my childhood. And I used to use models and teach myself how to shoot those. Only back then we had to have a whole pulley little weird system to make the space move behind it because we didn't have a way to do that. So I would get this black material and pop holes in it and put lights behind it, and then I would have like this weird whole thing of they were, basically these dowel rods. And
Hmm.
then we would, for the end of it, we would, be able to turn a crank and move the material left or move it right. And then you would be able to basically have the space moving behind the spaceship. But for this movie, for Wolf Moon Rising, for the ships, they're not CGI. I actually got a whole bunch of Star Wars and Star Trek and even a Space 1999 model and broke them all down and put it all back together as these ships that we see in the movie.
Hmm.
Those are like a bunch of parts from other models that I made into our ships. And then I filmed all those, on a cool blue screen background, and I didn't have all the technology still. So if I wanted to move the ship, I had to literally move my arm like it's on one of those, cool motion control arms that you can hook up to the computer and everything and do the same movement over and over and over. But I had to do that by hand, including Dylan's transformation scene into a werewolf. I had to basically she had 7 different stages of makeup
Wow.
and to turn into a werewolf, and I had to do that by hand, the camera movement by hand, and try to match it each time so that her transformation scene looks like it's just one seamless effect from beginning to end, but it's really 7 different times that we shot the same camera move with her in different stages of makeup, so it would look like all one seamless shot. And that it's all because of those days with Roger Corman and what I learned from those movies and watching those movies and loving those movies. And Wolf Moon Rising is a crossover for that. Dreaming Purple Neon is my second favorite movie I think I've ever made of the new movies, not the old ones. My favorite old movie would be Violent New Breed, followed by Moonchild, but my favorite new one was Dreaming Purple Neon. But it was so extremely gory because it was kind of my answer to people who said on House of Forbidden Secrets, yeah, it's got gore, but it's not near as gory as your old stuff. We really want some of that. So I said, oh, you want gore? Okay.
I
Okay. I'll
got
make the bloodiest movie I ever made. Let's do it. But Dream Purple Neon has a great script. And that's the difference also. Over the years, I've become different in the way that I don't just want to make gross out monster movies or, you know, throw blood around or any of that. Sure, that's part of a horror film, but I want to tell a good story. So it always starts with the story now. I Dream Purple Neon, it has a cool story behind it. House of Forbidden Secrets, great story. Bone Hill Road, good story. Very simple, straightforward story, but a good story. Some people were mad at me. They're like, this isn't even a werewolf movie. I'm like, it certainly is a werewolf movie, but it's got other elements because for Bone Hill Road, I didn't want the werewolves to be the bad guys. I love werewolves so much. I wanted them to just be kind of cool. So they're not evil, they're not good, they're just there. And these people are on their land. So everything that's going on in that movie, like you mentioned with Douglas, it's not it's a werewolf movie, but it's more than that. And there's a twist in there. Some people love the twist, and some people go, for a half an hour, there wasn't even any werewolves in it. But that's not true. There's still werewolves. People are just not, they wanted one thing, which is a straight ahead werewolf movie. And I gave them something else, which was a werewolf movie with a really cool twist, I thought. And the real monster in the movie is a human. It's not a werewolf. The werewolves are just eating. I mean, they're just, it's their land. These people are on their land. They happen to be hungry. End of story. Just like real wolves. Real wolves are not monsters. They're not evil. But if you start crap with them, or they feel fear, or they feel like you're going to hurt them, or they're just starving, things can go sideways.
Oh,
That's
sure.
kind of the way it was with the werewolves. And that's why with Bone Hill Road, it was that way. But every movie I make now, I'm trying to tell a good story, I'm trying to be a storyteller. In the early days, the stories, the scripts were basically just a way to get from one gore scene to another, or one shock
Right,
scene,
right.
or one spooky scene. So that's why you got like minimal. I mean, here, boom, boom, boom. It's all about the scenes of the effects and everything. But now it's kind of a mixture of everything. I want to really tell a good story. And I think Wolf Moon Rising tells a really cool
I think
story
Wolf
about
Moon Rising
werewolves.
is great. I think it's great. I think it's a great movie. I mean, I enjoyed it. I've really, I liked, what was it? The one at the radio station was
Oh yeah, Final Caller. Yeah,
Final
it's
Caller.
my
I
only
liked it
slasher movie.
too. That was one of, I thought one of Jack's, like Jack did a spectacular job on that one too.
He did, yeah, and you know he and Douglas played off of each other perfectly, and that's got some really cool twists, some really good stuff in it for the story. And the thing about that movie is, we were so bored because we couldn't make movies, and COVID was hitting,
Yeah.
and we, you know what? We were like, screw it, I'm gonna make this movie. I'm gonna put it on the credit card. We made this movie. You wouldn't believe the budget for that movie. It was so low that I promise you couldn't even make a car payment with the money we spent on that movie, I promise. And it's weird because that movie in particular was the only time I've done a slasher movie, and even then it wasn't a straight ahead slasher. It had other things, the reason why he was killing people and things like that. Because I've never been into like the true, I mean, true crime shows on TV are cool, but I don't want to make a Jeffrey Dahmer movie. I don't want to make, Ed Gein, even though I think he's great inspiration for one of my all-time favorites, Texas Chainsaw and things like that. And I know he inspired Psycho and everything, but I don't want to make a movie about a human being who's just a messed up guy that's killing people. I'm Henry Lee Lucas. I'm not making those movies. Those movies, they don't inspire me. I think those people are um, just incarnately evil, and I think I don't want to make movies about that. I want to make movies about fantastical things, about the supernatural, about
Well,
zombies, about anything, but
tell me
not.
about this picture here.
Yeah, it's Linnea Quigley on the set of Bone Hill Road. Those are two of my werewolf heads that came from England, and GDS effects, and they are fantastic, unbelievably articulated, great werewolf heads that he makes over there. Had to get them shipped all the way to the USA. They were very expensive and very awesome. And Linnea is on the set. She was uh, one of the characters in Bone Hill Road. She and I have been friends for 20 years or more, actually, probably 25. But I love her dearly. I think she's an incredible person. She loves animals so much in her heart and her soul, and she's got a really good spirit. And we kept saying we're going to work together, and we finally did. But that's the thing with me. Everyone I ever say, like Diane Thorne, who played Ilsa in the drive-in movies, like Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, and all those. I said to Diane, we're going to work together. It took me 10 years, but I worked with her because anytime I tell someone we're going to work together, I always come through. The only person that it didn't work with so far was Tony Todd, because Tony Todd was going to be in our werewolf movie, Wolf Moon Rising, but it couldn't happen because Tony got sick and passed away, unfortunately. But
Hmm.
anyone else, I always tell them, we're going to work together. Trust me. And it always happens. And that's one of the things I love about doing these movies, is working with some of the people I admire so much.
You actually have met a lot of the people that you watched or the directors and all that. You've actually met them at the conventions and you've worked with several, it sounds like, at least at some
I've become,
capacity.
yeah, yeah, I've become really good friends with a lot of the people I really, to this day, I idolize, and I respect so much as artists and creators. And I'm proud to call them friends. Jim Wynorski's my friend. God, man, Fred Olin Ray and I are not only friends for years, but we also he produced and executive produced and even wrote the first episode of TNT Jackson, our TV series that we did, that, the first time I got to work with you. And
Yeah, it's great.
what a great experience. And then Charlie Bain, David Dakota, who introduced me to a lot of these guys when I was very young. When Dave and I signed the deal, I went out to LA, and Dave's been very supportive over the years, introduced me to so many people. And all these people introduce you to other people. As Dave introduced me to people like Kevin Tenney and Ken Hall, and all these great, and Kevin Tenney did Night of the Demons and Witchboard, and all these
Wow.
guys. I looked up to these guys so much, and now I call them friends, and they watch my movies, and they give me, like Jim Wynorski watched the movie, Wolf Moon Rising. He watched it twice, and he gave me incredible pointers. But with Wolf Moon Rising, he said, this movie was incredibly awesome. He said, this movie thrilled me. It was fun. He only had one pointer for the whole movie. And that was like, wow, that's amazing. So, when your peers love your movie, and I only call them peers because of we're all in the movie industry together, but in all honesty, they're way above me. They're masters of their craft. Mick Garris, Rolf Konevsky, all these guys that are my friends are masters. It started early on though, because way back in 1989, when I was working on Zombie Rampage, it was Blood of the Undead. It got changed to Zombie Rampage on video. But
Hmm.
when I was working on that, I reached out to a guy named Herschel Gordon Lewis, who I loved his movies as a kid. H.G. Lewis made the first gore movies: Blood Feast, 2000 Maniacs, Color Me Blood Red, Gore Girls, Gruesome Twosome. He made all those. And I reached out. I looked up I knew he lived in Florida. I looked it up, and I found him in Florida, and he was not making movies anymore. He was a marketing genius. I reached out to him, and much to his wife's dismay, I kind of got him back into movies. We started doing the script for Blood Feast 2 together. We became friends. His wife was from Kansas City.
Hmm.
So she was mad at me for a while because she didn't want him to do movies anymore. So that was a horrible, horrible experience for him. But then it turned out good. I mean, he ended up doing some more movies in his later years that people loved. Herschel's no longer with us, and I miss him dearly. But between Herschel and like my friend Stage Stallone, who I met through our love of Lucio Fulci, um, Chaz Balin introduced me to a lot of those guys. Chaz Balin's also no longer with us. He was the author and owner of Deep Red magazine, and he also wrote for Gorezone and Fangoria and several people. But Chaz was an authority on these movies. Introduced me to tons of people, and it's just great how things worked, because the horror movie crowd and the horror movie artists and people who create horror movies, the filmmakers and everybody, they're such good-hearted, amazing, wholesome, honest people compared to some of the other types of movies I've encountered. Some real snotty, egotistical people, but horror movie people are not like that. Clive Barker hung out with me and my son in Dark Delicacies bookstore in Los Angeles and just sat there and talked to my son for 45 minutes about his inspiration for Hellraiser. I mean, these everybody wants to help each other, and sure, there's some competition because it's LA, and there's competition to make movies, but there's also a brotherhood and a friendliness, and people like Joe Dante, who, by the way, Joe Dante's in Wolf Moon Rising, and he created The Howling and Gremlins and The Burbs and a million great movies. And Joe Dante loved the concept, liked the script, agreed to do this because I was such a fan of his stuff. And Joe sent me this great Howling 4K signed to Todd Sheets and the crew of the Amber Star from
That is
Joe
awesome.
Dante.
That is absolutely
That's
wonderful. Hey,
that's amazing.
tell me about this picture here. I don't know where this one is or what this one's about.
That is at the Alamo Draft House in Kansas City for our screening of House of Forbidden Secrets. And a little known fact is we were the first ever sellout for the Alamo Draft House in Kansas City when
Oh,
we
really?
did that premiere. And that
Wow.
premiere, in that picture's a lot of great people too. Lou Temple was in that movie. Lou Temple was one of the major stars of Walking Dead at the time. He played
Wow.
Axel, and it was the hottest show on television. And he was in that movie because we bonded. He had leukemia, and I had the quadruple bypass heart attack, the And we bonded over that. And he came and visited me in Kansas City. We talked, and he's in that movie. George Hardy is in that movie from Troll 2. Lloyd Kaufman, who I've known since I was a teenager, who really was supportive of me from Troma Films in New York City. He's in that movie. Uh, Ilsa herself, as I mentioned, Diane Thorne, and her husband Howard Maurer did tons of movies. She was even on Star Trek, and she's in that movie. And that's the local cast there you're seeing in the picture with George Hardy. He's there too. And Alan Kaiser. Alan Kaiser is a local in the Kansas City area. He's outside of Kansas City, but he's near Kansas City. And Alan Kaiser is was Bubba on Mama's Family, but I loved him most as the Bradster on Night of the Creeps. I just love that movie so much. It's a huge inspiration for me, and he played in that movie. So in House of Forbidden Secrets, he did that role. I brought the Bradster back. This is what if Bradster had
Awesome.
lived, during Night of the Creeps, if he had lived, this is what he would be doing now. That was my take on it. So it's
That
he
is
was
absolutely beautiful. That's a great story. And here's Dreaming in Purple Neon.
yep. Local tattoo artist Shane did that picture for the cover.
It's a
I thought he did a great job.
great picture. Uh, Kind of back, like I guess you've learned a lot, but if you could synthesize it down, maybe to give advice to someone, what would it be? Someone getting ready to get started in the movie filmmaking business.
Here's my advice. First of all, start with a good story, and sound is incredibly important. So buy a couple of microphones that are good, and follow your dreams, do what you need to do, but read books first. Like go out and get some books. Get film directing shot by shot. Get painting with light. Get Save the Cat. Get these books and a million others. Feature filmmaking at used car prices. Anything like that. There's a ton of great books. Lloyd Kaufman even has some cool books about filmmaking. Get out there and get some books. Read about it. Don't rely on people on YouTube. Create your own vision, but learn the fundamentals of filmmaking before you start, and your films will not be attacked like mine because you have to know what a director's line is. You have to know composition, the line of action, the 3-point light setup, all these things. Learn all that stuff before you even do it. Here's a great piece of advice also. Think of your favorite movie. Let's say it's Beetlejuice. Take your cell phone, go out with your friends, pick up, pick a scene. It's one of your favorite scenes in the movie, and shoot it. I'm not talking about costuming. I'm not talking about makeup because it costs a lot of money, but just get some lights, some LED lights, which are very affordable. You can do spots or you can do, huge shop lights, whatever you want. Get some LED lights, go out there and try to light everything the way you see it in that movie and start recreating the scene shot by shot. By doing this, you're going to learn camera placement, composition, the director's line. You're going to learn all of that by taking one of your favorite Hollywood films, Batman Returns, whatever it is, and shooting a scene from that and do it over and over. Shoot a scene from Star Wars, shoot a scene from Ben-Hur, I don't care. Do it. Go back and watch the classics. Don't don't think that you know it all just because you've watched the latest Terrifier movie. Go back and watch the classics because they know how films were made. They're artists, they're artisans, they're amazing craftsmen. A lot of times people forget the craft and the art of filmmaking. I didn't even know it when I started. Luckily, I have embraced it and loved it so much through the years, and I'm still learning. To this day, I will sometimes rewind that Blu-ray or that 4K and look at that scene again over and over to go, man, that's really well done, and try to learn from it. That's my advice. That way, when you tell your stories, people will give a damn enough to watch it. Because one thing I noticed is when you shoot things poorly with no sound, bad sound, or nothing's lit right, and everyone's fighting just to enjoy the visual, they don't enjoy the story at all. So you could have the greatest story in the world, but if you tell it like in a way that visually it's horrible, because film is a visual medium, you have to make sure that things look and sound the best you can possibly do on, and sometimes it's hard on your budget, but that's the number one thing. And also keep in mind it is a visual medium. So here's the thing. If you took all the dialogue out and you watched the movie on silent, Can you still understand the story from beginning to end? Now, not every detail, like you won't know that this guy happened to work for Scotland Yard or whatever, but without words, can you get the basic 3 or 4 points of the story, the beginning, the middle, the end? Can you follow that movie? If you can't follow it with the sound off, you got to go back and redo some stuff because that's the key. It's a visual storytelling medium. Show people, don't just sit and have a couple of people in a coffee shop telling everyone about it. Show them doing it. That's the key.
That's beautiful advice. I really like that. Um, what other, well, I guess, what else do you want to accomplish? Because like from my perspective, you've done so many projects, you've gotten better and better. Um, you're getting lots of awards, Wolf Moon Rising, you're um, kind of peaking, getting better and better. Where do you want to end? Like, have you like walked away from it now? Would you be happy with what you've done?
I would, um, but here's the thing. You never peak in filmmaking. You never do. Spielberg today still isn't peaked because every movie he makes, he does something new. He learns something new. He pushes himself further. Wolf Moon Rising pushed me so hard and so far, and it did that for a lot of us. And it's won 15 awards. It's still going. You know, between House of Forbidden Secrets, Dream Purple Neon, Bone Hill Road, this movie, Clownado even, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it has its fans. Uh, all these movies have won awards. We've won like 126 awards now, but I don't care about the awards. I care about the fact that we won them for one reason. We entertained somebody. They liked our movie enough to give us an award. They were entertained that much by what we're doing. And that's still where I'm at now. Like, if you ask me, well, what's your ultimate goal? It's still the same. I just want to entertain people. I want to tell a cool story. I want, I want that kid or that young adult or that anybody. I don't care if they're 50 years old, kid at heart, whatever. I want them to go and watch Wolf Moon Rising and escape any crap that they've got for 90 minutes. The bad day, forget about it. 90 minutes. Go in there and have a good time. Maybe when you leave it, you feel like maybe some of that weight has been lifted, because we all have dark moments in our lives and bad days and bad situations. And I want that to be still my goal, and it still is my goal to entertain people and to take that away, to take away the trouble in your life for 90 minutes. And as long as I can keep doing that and do it better each time, tell better stories each time, blow people's minds. Wolf Moon Rising, for the budget we had, is blowing people's minds everywhere across. I've been to 30 different cities personally with this movie, traveling around the country like they did in the old days. In the old days, William Castle, Roger Corman, these guys, they'd throw the movie under their arm, boom, they'd go out and four-wall the movie. That meant they'd go to different theaters and set up screenings there and show it in different cities. That's the old drive-in aesthetic of inside of me. It's who I am. I mean, if I did a love story, it'd probably still look like a grindhouse movie, or it would still be like something you'd see at a drive-in, because that's who I am. But uh, it doesn't mean it can't look beautiful. It doesn't mean it can't look professional, sound professional, have a good story. And that's the thing I'm noticing with this movie. It's played a total of 62 theaters. I couldn't go to all of them because it's cost prohibitive, but it's also playing all these film festivals, and it's still going to be doing that for quite a while, until it comes out on home video. So we're kind of letting the theatrical thing play, and we're letting the film festivals play a little bit before we push it out on home video, just so people, because I really honestly in my heart believe Wolf Moon Rising is the type of movie you need to see in a theater with an audience up on that big screen, because all the visuals we did, all the detail, the laser fights, the spaceship stuff, all the details, the monsters, the beautiful monsters crafted by Kyle Thompson, all that stuff, it has to be seen on the big screen to be appreciated correctly. I don't want someone watching this movie on a cell phone in an airport where it's distractions. I want them to see it in a theater. We got a beautiful, you know, Dolby mix. We got a beautiful soundtrack, the music, the sound design. It all needs to, I like that rumble when the ships are flying, you feel it in your chest. It's what it's all about, man. It's all about telling stories. And our next one is going to even be bigger, hopefully, and better because we keep growing. That's what we need to keep doing.
That's great. Do you have any final thoughts? Kind of final thoughts of the day, words of wisdom, which you've given a lot of words of wisdom, but any more?
I would like to say thank you to every single person who has ever watched a movie that I made and given me time out of their lives. Because let's face it, in this world, and especially in this world today with social media and all the crazy stuff going on, you know, you have to pick and choose where you give your free time because most people don't have much of it. So for someone to sit down and say, I'm going to dedicate 90 minutes to this guy and watch his movie, that means a lot. And that is incredibly special, not to be taken for granted ever. That is a gift to me. Thank you for doing that. And I hope in return, I have given you a gift of entertaining you. Number one thing I want to say. Number two, I want to thank all the great people I work with. I could not do any of this without my team. And this has been true since even back on Zombie Rampage in 1988. No man is an island, man. You have to have a team. And I've always been blessed with working with people I loved working with. And back in the old days with Mike Hellman, Tanya Monahan, Ginny Admire, all those people, Dana Cheney back then, all these great people, all the way up to now, the middle years when I got to work with so many amazing people. I got introduced to by Jenny Geigel, and I got to work with Abe Dyer and Ruth, and so many great Jolene. Man, the people, so many of them, I can't name them all. Then Rico and Antoine, and they were still with me. Rico passed away, but Antoine is still with me. 31 years later, we're still making movies together. He's a partner now, and I love the guy. He's like my brother, and I mean that. And when I say brother to people, I mean that too. Like we're brothers on this earth, and we really, I've been blessed to work with great actors. You mentioned Millie, this new wave now that I've been making since I came back after the heart attack. I got so many amazing people. You mentioned Amanda. I got Chris Fleetwood. I've got Travis Yeomans. I've got you. I've got like I said, Antoine's still here. Jeffrey Sisson still comes around and does makeup once in a while. So many great people. So many amazing people. Mike Reeb, he was a friend of mine who was a dealer. He had a video store and he dealt in movie posters and stuff, and he got involved. Man, he's now part of the family. This is what it's about. We're a growing family, and
It's awesome.
I've been blessed to work with so many people like yourself, Kyle. And without you guys, none of the words I put on paper mean a damn thing. You guys bring it to life.
Well, I truly appreciate it, and I'm glad to be included. I think your movies are getting better and better, and I'm glad that I'm in the process. So thank you so much too for meeting with me today. I've truly enjoyed it. And one thing, just because I think in the very beginning I didn't ask this, where I'm going to have it on video. Um, Tell me about your picture. I know your camera's not working right now, but tell me about your picture here.
Oh, well, that's my buddy Lefty. Lefty is a sweet baby who was hit. Her and her mother were hit by a car. The mother was killed, and I had to bury her, but Lefty was still alive but couldn't use the left side of her body, so I named her Lefty. Not very nice, I know. But I rehabilitated her and I held her on my lap and I used Neosporin and fixed her wounds. And pretty soon she was not only walking, she was running, she was climbing trees, she was using all of her limbs again like there was never a problem. And she had many, many generations of children who also had children. I've got three full families of raccoons that I love dearly. They're part of my family, and they're all named, and I spend anytime I'm in Kansas City, I spend a lot of time with them every single day. I spend time with them. I feed them and I see them early in the morning. I give them their breakfast before the day. And I also give them their dinner at night. And I just spend a lot of time with them because in Kansas City, they're tearing a lot of our trees out in the Northland. We've lost like 2,700 trees just this last summer. And so their food supply is dwindling here. And so I stepped in to try to help them to give them some support system for that. And I love them very much. And they get along with everybody. They get along with the cats. get along with the possums. I've got all kinds of friends. Foxes, they don't fight. They all hang out and because they're not fighting over food or anything. They all hang out. It's got a really cool ecosystem. But that's my thing. I love raccoons. They're my favorite animal, really. I love them so much. They're so gentle and intelligent. And so that's a picture of me feeding Lefty that yeah, my the phone wasn't working and I don't have a camera hooked up to my editing computer because it interferes with my Adobe software. So the codecs, the little programs, they don't like the codecs for the camera. It freaks them out. So
Well,
that's why I
actually,
don't have a
it's
camera.
it's all good. I love your story. I love it that you kind of stepped in and helped an animal, and I guess watch Lefty thrive.
Oh yeah, Lefty is Lefty is very old now, along with several of the others that were around at that time that I've gotten to know. Because when I started helping Lefty, all the others said, "Hey, he's all right," so
Yeah,
they started coming around.
exactly.
And Snowflake is still around. Snowflake was around when Lefty was young, and she was young too. And Snowflake, I named that because she's kind of got an inverted mask on her face. It's kind of lighter, and she's a lighter color. She's not a dark raccoon, so. She's still around. Frisbee, they all bring their kids to meet me and then their kids bring their kids and generations. It's insane. It's insane.
That's a beautiful story, though. Hey, thank you, Todd. I truly appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's been a pleasure.